dear President of TÜBA. It is a big honor for me to be here with my presentation. And also it is a big honor to meet with from different countries, science, from South Korea, from USA, from UK, from Kosovo, from Iran, from Kyrgyzstan, and with Turkish science. It could be very nice actually for me to talk in Turkish languages, but unfortunately we don't have interpreter. That's why I'm very sorry, my poor English. I try to read a little bit this my presentation. I'm coming from Konya city. Konya is very close to Ankara. It was capital city in Selçuk Empire during the 12th centuries. So it is important science diplomacy because at that time, during the 12th centuries, Konya got many scholars from all over the world. Now many scholars would like to go to Paris, New York, or some other cities, but at that time, America hadn't been discovered yet. So many scholars from all over the world, for example, Afghanistan, Mevlana Celaleddin Rumi came to Konya, or Şemsi Tebrizi, who is the really important scholar, came from Iran to Konya, or Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi also came to Konya from Hispania, Spain, Andalusia. So at that time, during the 12th and 13th century, it was a very famous city. So Selçuk University and the other universities, and we have 5 universities in Konya city, would like to try to really good position again, work with heart very much. I studied and worked many years in Konya municipality as a head of culture and social affairs department. I studied and professors from Selçuk University accepted my papers, and I started work as an academician in Selçuk University. If I have a mistake during my presentation, please forgive me because I'm very new academician. My topic is campus protest, especially in that starts in USA and spread the European Union. What is the effect in international global media representation of campus protest? So, as the reality of the genocide emerged during the Israel attacks on Gaza, protests around the world increased. Many people supported Gaza by marching for a permanent ceasefire. The media, which managed people's perceptions by using its propaganda machine, couldn't stop the public when the truth came out. In the US, campus protests were sparked by Colombia's first Arab president, I think who is originally from Muslim, Munise Shefik, who broke with 56 years of tradition by having police enter the campus and detain students. After the media coverage of these incidents, New York University built a wall resembling the West Bank wall to prevent protesters. You see the New York University's wall there. And mounted police entered the campus in Texas. Graduate students were expelled from the campus in Princeton, and professors who reacted to the arrest of their students in Georgia were dragged on the ground and detained. The campus protests of 2024 were similar to those that took place nearly half a century ago in the 1960s at American universities. This photo is from Kent State University campus. Columbia and New York University students demanded an end to the Vietnam War, and police acted brutally on campuses. Following President Nixon's announcement of a renewed escalation of the war in Vietnam and the killing of 4 Kent State University students by the National Guard, New York University students decided to organize a large-scale anti-war rally and spread campus protest. All these events gave birth to a libertarian youth that became famous all over the world as the generation of 65. the gate from Columbia universities. On 29 April 2024, the American Association of University Professors, one of the oldest non-governmental organizations in the US, issued a statement against the repressive attitude of security forces against campus protests in the US. So we talk a lot science diplomacy. We know that this situation and the development of scientific diplomacy depends on the strength of the international communication. We talked and discussed a lot the situation. And communication studies in the US prefer the term international communication to global media. International communication is associated with war, diplomatic relations, and international organizations. Globally, media can play an important role in conflict and its resolution. According to conflict researchers, the media plays an important role in exacerbating conflicts or bringing about peace. The media construct individuals' perception of reality every day. The Israel-Palestinian conflict has attracted worldwide media attention. Despite more than 2 decades of peace efforts, Israel's occupation and oppression continues. When we look at the history, Israel's hegemonic order is largely the product of Zionism, while the concept which was first introduced into the literature of political thought by a Russian Jew in the last quarter of the 19th century expressed an emotional, cultural, and national movement until Theodor Herzl, with Herzl, the Zionism movement transformed into political Zionism based on the land that is the state. On the other hand, one of the biggest obstacles to a Jewish state is anti-Semitism. The concept, which is basically characterized as anti-Semitism, has affected Jews in different dimensions. It is interesting, Gaza is historically recognized by Zionist Jewish as Palestinian land. Despite this situation, Gaza faces a variety of serious social and economic challenges, including maternal mortality due to the blockage imposed since 2006. Hamas, Islamic resistance movement, which controls the Gaza Strip, launched Operation Al-Aqsa Flood against Israel on October 7, 2023, in response to Israel's human rights violations, killings, and illegal settled policies in the Palestinian territories it has occupied for 75 years. Israel's declaration of a state of war and the subsequent unleashing of a war of ruthless aggression and mass retribution has heightened the intensity of the conflict in the region. Israel, unfortunately, didn't hesitate to shoot civilian places in Gaza by turning the events that started into this information-based process. And a great trauma is being experienced in the Gaza in Israel's attacks on the Gaza Strip. More than 30,000 Palestinians, including at least 15,000 children and 10,000 women, lost their lives, and more than 60,000 people were injured. The globalized Western media hasn't adequately covered the events in Gaza, focusing only on the attacks on Israel. According to Chomsky, who is of Jewish origin, he argues that through the media, especially in the democratic societies such as the US, the state, without resorting to violence, tries to make the public accept the dominant values of American foreign policy such as violence, aggression, and occupation. Chomsky explains these with the concept of, it is very famous, manufacturing consent. The propaganda model, developed by Edward Herman and Noam Chomsky and published in 1988 in the book Manufacturing Consent, attempt to explain the behavior of mass media in the United States. The model provides a critique of the capitalist political system that goes beyond the theories of elitism put forward by Pareto, Moscow, Burheim, Michels, Wright-Mills, and Schumpeter. The main components of the propaganda model are summarized under the following headings: the size of monopolized ownership of the media. Second one is media reliance on information provided by power abroad experts. Third one, reaction production as a tool to discipline the media. Last one, anti-communism as a national religion and control mechanism. These 5 items are the screening that a news story goes through before it appears in the media. If the news item passes all of them, it appears in the free media. The campus protests in the aftermath of the Hamas-Israel conflict naturally claim to have been covered from the perspective of objective press criteria by the international press, which adopts the liberal doctrine. However, the way in which the international press reported on this issue should be considered with the framework of the propaganda themas in Herman and Chomsky's study. In this context, it is important to evaluate the role of global press in the coverage of the campus protest and their presentation from this perspective. This study aims to reveal the perspectives that international media organizations offer to the field of global journalism in order to investigate the difference or similarities in their editorial policies over an important international event. In order to answer this question, the American university campus protests against Israel's attacks on Gaza, which created a great repercussion in the world, were analyzed comparatively through quantitative and qualitative content analysis on CNN, BBC, The Times of Israel, CGTN from China, Russia Today from Russia, Al Jazeera from Qatar, and TRT World from Turkey news websites with different editorial policies. The time period selected for the study was determined as 1.5 month period covering April and May, when the campus protest first started in the US. Only the written text published on the websites of the news channels considered in the study constituted the object of analysis. In order to organize and analyze the data, basic and subcodes were determined according to the purpose of the research, and content analysis coding chart was created. The method of content analysis is one of element of media evaluation or analysis, but it allows the researcher to find more important constructors, such as the frequency of commonly used keywords. For example, this situation, this analysis is a systematic and iterative technique that compresses a large number of words in text into fewer content categories through coding. We use MaxQDO program, which turns data analysis into a highly visual presentation for researchers. Is a computer software program that enables qualitative and quantitative data to be systematically organized, analyzed, and evaluated. A total of nearly 400 news items were analyzed for the research data. The more than 200,000 words used in these news items were subjected to analysis. The main purpose of this study is to determine how the global media covers campus protest news within the framework of Herman and Chomsky's propaganda model. This study also explores 5 sub-objectives. Findings. The frequencies and percentage of the most frequently used word in campus protest news, and some of the news items they were found in are given in the table. According to the table, the first 3 most used words were university, student, and protest. Word cloud generated by MaxQDO 24 based on the frequency of use of more than 200,000 analyzed words in nearly 400 documents of all campus protest news. And also, when the cloud of combination with a maximum of 3 words in the campus protest news in analyze with the Mosquito program, the above figure emerges. When the analysis of the word frequency of only once per document is analyzed in the cross table according to the media channels variable, the following results are obtained. As seen in the color table, the color tones get darker according to the frequent use of the word. Less frequently used words are reflected in light tones according to Times of Israel has the highest number of words, followed by CNN, Al Jazeera, BBC, TRT, RT, and CGTN. So it was concluded that the words students, university, Gaza, war, Hamas are also frequently used words. Analyzed, it is seen that the Times of Israel news channel frequently used the terms hostage and anti-Semitism, while the Israel news channel used the term hostage nearly 300 times. Al Jazeera used it just 1 time, and CGTN didn't use it all. It was revealed that Al Jazeera channel used the concept of genocide the most. The concept of anti-communism, which is Herman and Chomsky's 5th point, is defined as anti-Semitism in our study. Anti-Semitism is analyzed in the same way as Herman and Chomsky's understanding of communism as an enemy and the expression of Hamas. Conflict and terrorism, which are thought to be used specifically to instill fear and hostility in society, are also subjected to analyze. The code matrix browser is used to compare the cases. As seen in the figure, the size and color darkness of the dots are proportional to the frequency of word usage in the Mosquito program. According to the matrix, the Times of Israel emphasize Hamas, CNN emphasize anti-Semitism, BBC emphasize anti-Semitism and Hamas. When the results of the code combination model are analyzed, it is seen that there is a strong relationship between academia and AAUP, American Professors Association. While the connection with the war is stronger than the other relationship, it is seen that professors have a relationship with all concepts. The thickness of the line between the words shows the strength of the relationship. Looking at the matrix results among the news sources related to science and academia, it is seen that CNN and the Times of Israel sources give more coverage to these expressions than other news channels. One element of Herman and Chomsky's propaganda model is that the media relies on information provided by experts approved by power. In this context, although the campus protests took place in the US, it was observed that the media channels didn't follow the events much with their own reporters. When we look at the matrix table in which all news sources, including the phrase reporter and agency, are combined into a single table, it is seen that the Times of Israel publishes more news from news agencies than other media outlets, and likewise, it has more news from reporters than other media outlets. This table also shows that media channels really rely on agency news more than their own reporters. RT or CGTN are the weakest channels in terms of using news agencies and using their own journalists. Analysis conducted according to the coding frequencies. In the code frequency counting conducted on 42 AFAP documents from originally France, the expression anti-Semitism 90 times, genocide 24 times, and hostage more than 100 times were identified. It is observed that the numbers of AP from originally USA and Reuters from originally from UK are lower than AFAP. In this regard, according to the result of the cross-tabulation made by including all documents among the agencies used as news sources for the campus protests, AP with 16 and AFAP with 24 in terms of lowest coding frequency in terms of genocide, Reuters news agency used the term genocide in higher numbers than other channels. The concept of hostage, which Israel supporters try to emphasize, was used 16 times in Reuters, more than 100 times in AFP, and more than 50 times in AP. When the Mosquito Code combination model is applied to research, it is seen that a strong relationship is tried to be established between Hamas and terrorism. There is also a relationship and link between anti-Semitism and terrorism. It is seen that the strongest relationship with Columbia University is anti-Semitism. There is also a relationship between terrorism and Colombia and California. When the most frequently used words in the news on campus protest and the concept of anti-Semitism are analyzed with the single case model, it is found that the concept has a strong relationship with the concept of university and student. It is observed that the concept of anti-Semitism is less associated with Colombia and Israel than these two concepts. And also when we look at the single case model, we have seen that professors has really strong relation with university and students. When analyzed with the Mosquito single case model, it's seen that there is a strong relationship between the university and the student. When the media channels were classified as a Western and Eastern, it was found that the Eastern Bloc media outlets used the expression diplomacy, which is Western Bloc never used, while the Western Bloc used the American Professors Association, which the Eastern Bloc never used. When we analyze the level of relationship between the most used words according to the Mosquito Code combination model, we found that there is a strong relationship between Colombia and anti-Semitism. Similarly, there is a strong relationship between Hamas and terrorism. At a lower level, there is a relationship between anti-Semitism and terrorism and Hamas. As a result of this analysis, it was revealed that the campus protests were intensively presented in the news channels in connection with anti-Semitism, Hamas, and terrorism. Similarly, when the code combination model between the science and academia code cluster and the concept code cluster is examined, it is revealed that the relationship and connection is established between academia and terrorism. According to single case model analysis of the program, it was revealed that a strong relationship between the concept of anti-Semitism at the university was used in the news, followed by an attempt to establish a strong relationship between anti-Semitism and students. Likewise, it has been revealed that there is a strong relationship between the concept of professor and the university and students in the news. In the analysis of the research article in the context of Herman and Chomsky's propaganda model reveals that the last item of the model, the expression of anti-communism, which is defined as anti-Semitism or Islamophobia in our research, was used extensively in the news. Campus protests were presented together with the concept of anti-Semitism, terrorism, and conflict. It was observed that the concept of student, university, protest, and professor were tried to be associated with the anti-Semitism, Hamas, and terror at the strong level of relationship. In this context, it can be concluded that in propaganda model, by associating the campus protest as an enemy with Hamas and terrorism in the news, and by linking students, academics, and professors with terrorism and anti-Semitism, the society was asked to have a negative consciousness against the campus protest. Another point stated in the propaganda model is that AFP, AP, and Reuters news agencies were used as news sources more than the media channel's own reporters. This points to the accuracy of the propaganda models emphasized on the fact that reputable news sources will be preferred more by media channels. And also the emphasis in the propaganda model that media channels cannot approach objectively when evaluating events for advertising revenue was confirmed for our analysis in the model due to the fact that the concept of boycott was not used much in the news. The protest aimed to disconnect the economy of universities from the Israel economy. It was observed that the slogans of the student demanding BDS, means boycott, divestment, and sanction, were not covered in the news. By using words such as anti-Semitism, Hamas, and terror instead of boycott, it is thought that the reader is trying to cover up the goal of the campus protest, namely the boycott. When the cross-tabulation between the concept of anti-Semitism, hostage, and genocide of the new agencies that the news channels rely on to analyze, it is seen that AFP is the agency that uses these concepts most intensively. These results can be considered as an indication that news agencies and news channels consider the 100 people held hostage by Hamas as more credible than Israel's massacre of more than 30,000 people. In news agencies or news channels, 100 people held hostage by Hamas are more valuable in terms of news value than the 30,000 babies, innocent people, and women killed by Israel in Gaza. The monopolistic powerful capital structure mentioned in the propaganda model is valid for all of the media channels subject to our research. Most of them are state channels. Operation in Gaza decreased intensively. In this framework, it was seen that the campus protests were a soft power solution tool to the Gaza issue, which states or governments all over the world couldn't solve, which the actions carry out in the context of science diplomacy with the framework of the cooperation model of universities, students, academia, and science. Thank you very much.